people. And I wouldn't.
Okay, so good. Thank you.
So good morning. Right off the bat, we're going to start with committee member updates and announcements. So that includes those in person and those on the virtual side of things. So does anybody have any updates that they want to share with this group to start off with? Well, hearing none, you have a chance probably later, but then we'll move on to Santa Clara River GSA updates. Chair Long, would you like to give an update on the Fillmore and Piru Basin GSA?
Well, actually, I'll just hand it over to you. You were at the last meeting. I wasn't able to attend, but I do know we're doing really well and our application is turned in, so that's good. Is there any other update that we need to say?
For in supplement to that, all of the GSAs in the area have submitted their GSPs. So in the case of the Fillmore and Piru Basin GSA, both GSPs were submitted on January 26th before the end of the month, and DWR reviewed them for completeness, and they were uploaded to the DWR Sigma portal, and they're open for 75 days for public comment. And I believe that period ends for that particular one on April 23rd. The last time I checked last week, there was one comment from somebody I don't recognize and hasn't participated in the process, just saying, commenting on the fact that we have multiple years of drought right now, and that's very important, which I think we all agree with. I guess one other thing I could add on that is all of us have been working on trying to complete our first annual report following submittal of the GSP. So the Fillmore and Piru Basin GSA is working to reviewed a draft a week ago and is working to submit those before April 1st. So that would be covering the last year plus of data and updating the agency's database of groundwater pumping records and water quality records. So that's the first item. And then most of the GSAs are going to be starting a period of implementing the things that are in their various plans. I don't know if we have anybody from the Santa Clarita Valley Basin GSA. Is there anybody?
Hi, Tony.
Online?
Hi, Tony. Good morning, everybody. Tony, you could have given our update for us as well. We've submitted the plan. We've prepared our annual report. We're keeping tabs on the website to see if we've had public comments submitted. The GSA board has a meeting next week where they'll be asked to adopt the annual report. And that's it from Santa Clara. So very similar to what you described, Tony. Thanks.
Thank you for the update on the upstream basin. Do we have anybody from Mound Basin? Doesn't sound like it, but I can report also Mound Basin did submit its GSP a bit earlier. I believe that was submitted in December, and it's also up on DWR's website for final public comment. And just to note, DWR has probably provided been provided by all of us a dump truck full of virtual GSPs. And so I'm sure that there's a very small number of human beings who are tasked with reviewing those at DWR and providing comments. And they have 2 years from the time of submittal. And my guess is they'll use that entire 2 years on some of these because they're going to have some time. So if any of us are holding our breath for immediate comments on those, it's probably going to be a while. I believe it was almost 2 years for most of the critical basin reviews, and there were, how many of those? 21 in the state. Does that sound right, John? Yeah, so there were a smaller number, but those were basins that had some real problems. And I'm not sure if maybe one thing to note also, the Oxnard Plain area is mostly geologically part and hydrogeologically part of the Santa Clara River, even though we may kind of cut the line down the levees for the purposes of our watershed divisions. But DWR has approved both actually the Las Posas Valley GSP, as well as the Oxnard and Pleasant Valley GSPs that were put together by the Fox Canyon GMA and submitted a couple of years ago in 2020, January 2020. So there's clearly a lot of work to be done on both of those GSAs and fulfilling the purposes of the GSPs. But it's encouraging to hear that DWR thought that quite a bit of work was done correctly. They noted that this area had really good information and understood the basins and understood the problems and so had a good handle on the problems. But the proof's going to be what we do from now on in solving those deficits. I should have asked if there is anybody from the Fox Canyon GMA, Kim or Arnie, are you on this and want to add something?
I don't see anyone. And there is, I see Lynn Planbeck has her hand raised. If you want to ask a question or comment.
Hi, I'm Lynn Planbeck, and I'm an alternate member on the Upper Santa Clara River GSA. And Rick Vergoots reported the filing of our GSA, of our GSP. But I do want to say we had several comments from environmental organizations and members of the public concerning one section of the GSA where the section is on subsidence and the fact that they hadn't really looked at subsidence issue too much, but they said that with new development coming, they anticipate that there may be drops of up to 150 feet in the groundwater level. And several commenters indicated their concern over that and wanted to know whether the lower basin was aware of that, because of course, with Newhall Ranch, when the EIR said it was going to drop 10 feet, all holy heck broke out. And so I'm just bringing that up to let you know that those were comments that we received in the GSA. And I hope that as the Fillmore plans and the Oxnard Plain plans move forward, that you'll sort of keep an eye on that to make sure it's not affecting what you're trying to do. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll make sure and coordinate with Rick's team on, we did early coordination on the modeling and the scenarios that were used in the planning, but we plan on staying in touch with between the different basins to make sure that we're all as synchronized as possible and in addressing important issues. So thank you for that comment.
This is John Linquist from United. I just wanted to add on Mound Basin status. So they just also submitted, or I'm sorry, they haven't submitted, but their board reviewed and tentatively approved their 2021 annual update report for Mound Basin. There was a small discrepancy in M&I water use that they wanted to resolve before finalizing that, but they should get that done by the due date. And then the Fox Canyon GMA meeting yesterday, their board approved the Las Posas Valley Basin 2021 annual update as well.
Anything more on GSA updates? Let's move to our speaker for the morning, Jason Sun with United Water. He's going to be giving us an update on the latest findings on the regional groundwater model and seawater intrusion. Thank you, Jason.
Okay, thank you. I think everyone can hear me. So good morning, everyone. And thanks for the opportunity to present United Water's model development and also focus on, today I'm going to focus on the seawater intrusion study. Okay. So as you may know that United Water has developed several regional model, groundwater model. First is the coastal plain model that actually I believe that we have presented to you when we finish the coastal plain, and is shown in the red line here, covering the coastal plain area, okay? And then we also develop another one, expanding the coastal plain model to regional model that we did finish in 2020, and actually presented to you into the committee meeting in 2020, October. And that basically is expanding the model along the Santa Clara River toward Santa Paula, Fillmore, and Pyro, cover the whole area. It's one model. Now, you may notice there are a couple of differences you may want to know because I'm going to talk about it. First, the simulation period. The earlier model ends in 2015. The new one, of course, we try to extend as much as possible. We finish in 2019, ending in 2019. And also, you may notice the blue line and the red line kind of the gap here. That's because coastal plain model, when we developed, that was we started pre-Sigma period. We are following the traditional boundary. With the Sigma, with the DWR, we define the basin boundary, so they shift a little bit. So there's a little bit gap here and there, okay? And I'm gonna talk about in the next few slides about the update. When I do the update, not only extending the time, but also try to reconcile difference, so move the boundary to be consistent with the DWR boundary, okay? And in the past 6 months, we have also not only updating the coastal plain model, we are applying a new model called USG that would have transport component for our study in the seawater intrusion, okay? And what is USG? USG stands for unstructured grid. What it means is in the typical USGS groundwater model, they use finite difference. And the finite difference is very easy to use, but it has one little limitation, is the grid size is not flexible, okay? And USG really make a big breakthrough in solving this problem. For example, if I go back a little bit, the grid size I use is Uniform Grid 2000, right? So if we want to look at some phenomena or something that's smaller than 2000, what should we do? And USG provide a flexibility. That is, for example, we are now interested in the brackish water, seawater intrusion from Port Wainimi to Point Mugu area. So what we did is we could refine the grids locally. Now you may notice the orientation a little bit off, and that's because of the software, okay? The north is, is upward, but on the different software, modeler like to rotate model in certain way, okay? So we rotate 26 degrees. We like square. When we look at it, we like square. We don't like anything weird, okay? So what we did is we have refined grids here to cover the area of interest. And this is 2,000 foot grid. This is 500, so that we can capture the more detailed seawater intrusion. And this is the great flexibility. And that's why we choose USG, okay? And so in a way, as I mentioned, so we, in the past 6 months, what we did is we updated the coastal plain model simulation time to 2016. We reconciled the model boundary, and then we applied the USG, okay? And this is what the new coastal plain model look like. If you look at the blue line, now it's consistent with the black line. Black line is the regional model, okay? The red line is the old coastal plain. We kind of move. So now we have a really consistent two model, coastal plain and the regional model are sharing the same boundary, and it's easier to maintain for future update. Okay, and they are all updated to 2019 simulation period. Okay. And here's just a quick list in case we have many model and I use different name. So just tell you this old model, I always like to use numbers. So it's 2018, finished in 2018. We use something called coastal plain model. We finish in 2020, regional. And these are all flow model, okay? And it was some model we use for local GSA, GMA used this one, Fillmore Pyru, and Mount used this regional. Now updating this one. From this one, we update to this one. Now we have a 2019 model, okay, still flow. Then we are adding a new tool, new capability that's transport plus density dependent. Brackish water, seawater is a density dependent transport. So we are adding this really, really good tool, in my opinion, that I believe in the future, USG will be a main software to use. And it do flow, you can do flow, you can do transport, you can have it all. So it's pretty good tool. Okay, before I dive into the seawater intrusion, I thought it's good to have a quick refresher on the hydrogeology. And later I'm going to talk about specific aquifer. So just let you a quick refresher is that in Oxnard Plain, from the ground below, the first aquifer is semi-perch aquifer. And because of the quality is not great, so not people are tapping into this one. So you don't hear many people talking about the first one, semi-perch. And then Oxnard, below the first one is Oxnard aquifer. Oxnard and Mugu aquifer were used in a much earlier time, before 1980, starting 1930, 40, 50, I believe people are pumping from the Oxnard and Mugu more. And it's called upper, UAS stand for upper aquifer system. And this is actually the seawater intrusion that I'm going to talk about. So I kind of want to highlight it. And then after 1980, people are pumping more in the lower aquifer system. And I will touch on the Fox Canyon aquifer, particularly upper Fox Canyon aquifer. So from below Mugu, we have Wainimi, Fox Canyon, and Grime, okay? So this is just a quick refresher so that later I'm going to talk about, say, UAS. You cannot know what it means. Okay, so based on USGS study, the seawater intrusion, seawater enter the aquifers in around 1950s because of the extraction in the upper aquifer system. And you can see, and it's going through the outcrop. What offshore the coastal line here is there are two interesting features, submarine canyon. This is Wainimi submarine canyon. This is Mugu Canyon. And the submarine canyon kind of provide a shortcut for seawater to enter into aquifer. And that's why you could see typically the intrusion kind of starting from Port Wainimi area and Mugu Canyon. This I call Point Mugu. This is a Navy-based area. And this is studied by GMA looking at the US. That means including Oxnard and Mugu. And you kind of recognize, okay, there's some intrusion in these two areas. USGS did a study in a more detailed aquifer specific. They look at the Oxnard aquifer and recognize the intrusion, more detail, okay? And there are many other studies. I'm not gonna cover it all, but I do like to kind of show you the trend. So next one here, we compare Oxnard aquifer and Mugu aquifer. So on the left here, Oxnard aquifer, this is 89 by USGS. You can see the extension, right? How far it goes. And then 2015, United Water did a study. We estimate it's around in this red line. You may say, hey, how come they are not much different? Or maybe it's kind of shrink a little bit. And remember, between 89 and 2015, there is a period of really wet year, I mean, wet years. And United Water, you know, with its mission, we spray water when there's available water in 4 bays somewhere here. And we spray water into Oxnard aquifer specifically. And those water are gonna push the brackish water, seawater, southward and back to the ocean, which I'm gonna show later. And then Magoo aquifer, showing here, this is what we study. We identify, estimate the area in 91 and 2015. Now, you are not going to see a significant pushback from our spreading in Magoo. The reason is one aquifer below. So we spray here and anything below is kind of you know, tempering out. So you are not going to see that kind of influence. And I'm going to show you later. So next slide. So we incorporate those data I show you, and we apply USG. We run the model, we simulate it, and we have finished. The first work I did is simulate the model from 85 to 2015. And then I extended to 2019. I believe this animation is up to 2015, even though I finished to 2019. I'm using this, I finished a couple months ago. So just want to point out, if you are interested, this is the clock starting 85. Okay, remember that we showed you before, right? This is the estimate of the 85. So when you run, you look at it, you will see in later year, this thing will kind of push this direction and out. Okay, so I'm gonna play it. And this is Oxnard aquifer. And you can see it's moving a little bit southward, and now you are seeing it's gradually pushing out toward the coast. That's because they are experiencing the wettest year, and United Water is spreading water, pushing the water. And once it's after the wet year into dry year, you can see gradually move back a little bit. Okay, and just give you a snapshot. So I'm adding a water level. This is still Oxnard aquifer. So this is the groundwater level. You can see many lines. That means you have a strong gradient toward the coast. That's because we are spreading here. So you have water, you know, you have gradient pushing it out. Now, if you look at here, this is end of 2019. Now this is 98 during the wettest year. You can see a local depression here, and the gradient is not significant. So, and the water is gonna move this way a little bit, okay? So you cannot show you the Oxnard aquifer, the dynamic, how it moved. And then the next one. So this one is the Magoo aquifer. Similarly, we're gonna show the animation. And what you see is moving inland a little bit. And you're gonna see moving inland a little bit. And you are not gonna see a significant pushback because it's one aquifer below Oxnard. Okay, I'm gonna play it. Not moving? Oh, it's moving. And you can see there's a blob forming in the middle of it. I cannot use the pointer because if I use it, I think you're gonna freeze the animation. And that's vertical leakage. Okay. Okay, now it's end. So you can see what you see is it moved inland a little bit, and here kind of show up first. That's because the leakage from the Oxnard aquifer. Okay, and what we learned from the past study and in our model simulation, we start to appreciate that seawater intrusion is not like a simple water move, migrating from the ocean and into the aquifer and inland. Actually, it's three-dimensional. There is some vertical connection. If the equator is thin or a pinch out, there's a vertical connection. So it may come from the top. It could come from the horizontal. So it's a little bit more complex than simple, oh, you are thinking the front just move horizontal. No, it's a little bit more complex than that. Okay, and this is Magoo aquifer. And I'm gonna use the same water level to show you. So Mugu aquifer, the same year as the Oxnard, you don't see a strong gradient. Actually, you have a little bit a local low point here. And that's because influenced by the Fox Canyon aquifer, there's a little bit local. This is a local depression here. Similarly, there's a local depression here. Okay. Okay. And this is upper Fox Canyon aquifer. And let's see how the simulation is telling. Okay, I'm gonna play. Okay, it's moving. So you can see the intrusion is gradually moving inland, and you can see something pop up that's leaking from the Mugu aquifer. Okay. You are not seeing any pushback like Oxnard aquifer because it's way deeper, and people are extracting from the Fox Canyon a lot. So you are not going to see that. So here are a couple of things that I observed I thought was interesting. I want to share with you. First, this is vertical leakage, right? Now remember the outcrop in Fox Canyon outcrop is way a little bit out. It's different from the earlier outcrop. Okay. So for the intrusion here along here is coming from the outcrop, from the ocean directly. That's understandable. But this area here is actually isolated. There's a fault sitting here across it. So this is really all coming from Mugu, from the aquifer above. This is all vertical. It's not like coming from here because there's no connection with the ocean. So for this little isolated area, it's actually coming from above. Okay. Okay. So this is really I show you three animation, three aquifer are the overall picture of the seawater intrusion that we have along the coast. Okay. And this is the similar thing showing you two snapshots. Two snapshots, and one is 98. Okay, you can see a local in wettest year. The cone of depression actually will be here and one here. Okay, but in dry year, the depression is here. So the cone of depression actually move depending on wet year, dry year, it may move. Okay, it's not like it's always here. Actually, you may, because in wet year, the user may get surface water delivery. They may dial back a little bit, and the depression, cone of depression may change. Okay. Okay, and then before I go talk about my specific simulation, I just borrowed this figure from our distinguished hydrogeologist, John Lindquist, that I'm sure you have seen this, that we are United Water are looking at various projects, analyze various projects. What's the impact? And we are using model to simulate all these. We have a team of modeler. We have Zach and Bram and looking at surface water, groundwater interaction. So we have a couple projects, we are looking at it. The one I'm going to show you is right here, EBB. EBB stands for extraction barrier brackish water. And I'm going to show you more here. But just to give you an over picture, we have a United Water we look at the expanding the diversion at Freeman. We have consider other projects, import increased water from Canal Creek. We look at recycled water from city of Oxnard and look at for the study analysis, evaluate the impact to the basin yield, the basin sustainable yield, that kind of a simulation. And we have done it. But these are all gonna, I'm sure it's introduced or being talked by our team of experts, John Lindquist and others. So I'm gonna just talk about this one, extraction barrier, using the USG model, okay? So what we did here a couple of months ago is a part of the Water Board grant. We look at, say, we're gonna extract brackish water and look at it. Suppose we treat it and put into good use. What is the impact? And we look at different extraction rate. And we look at, okay, we pump 5,000, 10,000, 15, 20,000. And for the 5,000, we even look at, say, we just 5,000, that's just, dump. We don't treat. Or we recycle the water back to user. And this simulation, we look at extracting from Oxnard and Magoo. And just to get a sense, what kind of impact is it? Is it at least on the modeling side? How is it technically sound? Okay. And what we did is we to be consistent with all the other projects is that we use GMA's GSP simulation assumptions. We did all the simulation for GMA, so it's very easy for us to use. You continue to use the simulation, no pump, no cutback, and then we use the same weather pattern, the assumption prescribed by DWR. So we run 50 years and evaluate the effect. Okay. So before going deeper, so what we look at is this is very preliminary well location. I have, in the past month or two, we changed this already. This was done 3 months ago. So this is the preliminary well location 3 months ago, but it has changed. But I kind of use it as a more abstract presentation. Okay, so we look at the well location. The preferred location is along the coast, around the Lagoon Canyon, the lagoon, not lagoon. Okay. Just an example. Suppose we extract along the coast. We have 6 wells in Oxnard, 4 in Magoo. Just the one he showed here. What is the impact? And what we did showing here is we extract 5,000, 3,000 extracting from Oxnard. Let's look at the impact on the Oxnard aquifer. Okay, and this is the animation. So what you want to see is we are extracting here. This is Navy base. This is the well we extract here. And we want to see at least the minimal, the impact of this brackish water. You probably cannot expect we extract here, we're going to influence here. We hope, but I don't think it's a big hope to try to influence everything. But at least this area, we want to know if it's effective. Okay, so we're going to run it. And you can see in the 50-year simulation, there are also wet year, dry year period. So you may see the front may move back and forth. But the main thing is around the Navy base, you can see it shrinks significantly. It's proving that the extraction barrier is effective in remediating the brackish water. And you can see the front is moving back. And the color here shown is chloride concentration. And from 100 to over 19,000. Seawater chloride concentration is 19,400 milligram per liter. So the red line is close to the seawater concentration. 100 is I can use as the cutoff and as a milligram per liter, okay? So what you see is this area used to be bigger, right? With the extraction, you could pull back, and it's obvious because of the extraction barrier. We deploy the extraction here, and we're actually effective in addressing the brackish water. Yes.
I'm gonna call this a really dumb question. I've never really understood how an extraction barrier works in this case, because just the layperson assumption is that the more pumping you do, the more seawater comes landward. So can you just quickly describe what an extraction barrier, how that would work?
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you. That's a very good point. I think I should add a slide. My bad. So what we did here is, suppose, let me go. Let's use this one to explain a little bit. I think this is good. So we extract here, right? So what happened is, the seawater would continue to come in, right? But the benefit is if we don't extract here, you expect the water, the seawater will continue to move forward, correct? Because of the intrusion. Because of the intrusion, that's why I want to address it. Otherwise, we don't need to do anything. Just because, so given the assumption that the water is moving inland, how can we stop it? One is inject, right? Inject to interrupt it. But inject, you need new water. Where do you find the water? Or you want to use water for something else. An interesting novel idea. The first time I hear extraction, I was thinking, is that a good idea? But after I doing this, actually it's a good idea. The reason is when you inject, you basically cut off the intrusion. Because seawater, you want to continue to move inland, but it stops where the extraction is, right? And then the current existing tarnished brackish water is gonna pour by the well and improve the water quality behind. So that's one benefit. And the second benefit is the extracted water, if we treat it, that's a new source of water. So instead of injecting it, first you need to find the water and you're gonna dump into it. And the injection, one of the problem with the injection is you inject, some more water gonna lost to the ocean. Okay, but you extract the water, you stop the intrusion and you have new water. So it's a two interesting way to look at it. And I think it's by itself is a good analysis, look at it, the pro and con of it. But the main, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, Dan Demmer. Lynn, if I could add another way, simple way to look at it is instead of that low groundwater elevation being in the middle of the basin and the seawater is moving towards that low point, we're creating an engineered solution where we put that low point right on the coast. So yeah, it continues on the seaward side, the intrusion continues, but we intercept it. And at the same time, we're pulling it back, the prior intrusion back towards that well field.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been had this question in my mind for the last, ever since Tony Morgan first introduced the idea of this project. And I didn't want to ask the dumb question, but now I feel like it's good to be able to explain that to people, and your explanation of the difference between injection and extraction makes sense. So thank you.
No, this is a really good question because I question that approach. Even as a model, I question that approach to begin with. But it is in a way, a kind of contrary to intuition. But from what I study here, for the area we are in here, it's actually a good solution. Unless like Orange County, they have plenty of recycled water. Then, okay, these are water, where to put, inject. Okay, then that's good for them because they have this resource to use. But here, I don't believe that we are actually needing, as an agricultural area, we need water. It's different from the urban area. So different area may look at things differently, okay? And then just look at another case. Let's look at, we also simulate 20,000. I deploy a bunch of wells. This is more a numerical exercise. In reality, it could be less, okay? Just want to point it out. Okay, so let's look at the 20,000. So when we do 20,000 and I extract 14,000 from Oxnard Aquifer, and let's see how it goes. And you can see the extraction, the brackish water shrink much faster, and then the 5,000, of course, because you extract more, so it shrink faster. And the second point that I want to see is the inference is greater in distance. You can see the way out is pulling water because you may know this intuition that because of when you extract more, the radius of inference is larger, and you're going to pull more water in. So you're going to see, for example, the impact here going to be more significant. 5,000 you probably won't inference here, but 20,000 you will see inference. And I think I may have a slide to explain that. Okay, this is a good one. So this is just Oxnard Aquifer. This is where we begin, 2019. Suppose we don't do anything. What you see is red is high crime. If we don't do anything, even though the front doesn't move much, you can see the red color is getting redder and redder. That means it's still intruding. okay? And the reason it's not moving significant inland is because of the local, the water level is a bit low here because of vertical leakage, but it's still moving quite significant. The water quality is getting worse. But with the extraction, you can see, compare with this one, you can see the improvement because this area is being addressed with the 5,000. 5,000 would address the local water quality around the Magoo Canyon area, okay? But go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
So does that mean that really the extent of intrusion can't push out any further? Basically, you said why not, but I just.
Oh,
So the boundary isn't going to ever grow, even if there was a lot more pumping.
well, that's be careful, very specific. You remember that Oxnard aquifer wasn't in the old 1930s, 40s, a lot of people tapping to Oxnard. Nowadays, it's not as significant because people are using Fox Canyon aquifer more. So because of that, because the aquifer below is pumping a lot, so it creates this natural, because when the aquifer is thin, it creates this little local depression. Suppose people are changing patterns, say, okay, let's start to pump Oxnard. This is gonna move. It really depends on the cone of depression. Okay, it's just happened with the, you can think about the history that GMA was formed. Why? Because what? Because people are tapping to Oxnard and Magoo, and they want to address the seawater intrusion. So as an interim measure is, okay, let's not pump the shallow aquifer, let's temporarily use the lower aquifer. So kind of leave a breathing room for Oxnard, okay? And not to mention United Water, as you know, with this mission, we spread quite a bit of water. So it kind of, Oxnard aquifer is not really the best aquifer to say, oh, intrusion never moved. It's just because Oxnard aquifer receive a lot of surface water recharge. So, but if you look at the deeper one, it's gonna move, okay? That's the nature demands. Okay, but my point here is want to show is, you can compare this one here, 2000. You can see the little gap here. If it's 5,000, it doesn't pull as much. So when you have more extraction, the influence is larger. So that's my point. That as an exercise, that the overlay makes sense to me. Okay, and I think I didn't. I'm glad you mentioned this question, but I don't think I have prepared. Maybe I'll try to see if I. Yeah. So this is really, and I should include the lower aquifer, kind of show you how it moves. Okay. But for this project, for the extraction barrier, because the brackish water extent is really more prominent, more severe in the Oxnard Magoo. So we are looking at this project is just pumping from Oxnard Magoo. And in the future, maybe the lower ecosystem, it'd be interesting to see how we intercept and provide a more analysis to it. But overall, my presentation here is to conclude is that what we believe is that USG model is a really good tool to study the seawater intrusion with the transport density dependent capability. And what we learn is seawater intrusion is not a simple two-dimensional problem. It's actually three-dimensional. It has horizontal migration, it has vertical migration, depending on the geology and how the water being tapped. If you tap water in the lower ecosystem, you have a stronger cone of depression. And in the shallow aquifer, because of vertical leakage, there may be some local depression. Okay. But don't interpret as, oh, that means everything's good. No, actually, if you go back to what I want to actually read the whole point of adding this figure, this slide look at it funny, is that why I add this one is try to make a point. If you look at here, this is not as red, right? But if you look at here, it's redder. So that means it's still moving. It's still intruding, okay? It's not like, okay, the front doesn't seem like it's not moving a lot, but you have look at the back, it's coming along, okay? And third one, we believe that extraction barrier is an effective way to mitigate the seawater intrusion. And also, it's a really good thing is that it would provide a new source of water that from our analysis, okay? And That ends my presentation. Any question or comments?
Thank you. As we wait, if there's questions online, we'll get to those. Please type in the chat or raise your hand. And I have a question. It's probably too soon to really give a clear answer on this, but I guess as you're narrowing in on, this project and looking at more refining it further, I'm interested to know how many community and mutual wells and, local wells could be affected under the no action versus the, 5,000 extraction or the 20,000 acre feet extraction. Like and is there a way of quantifying the, the economic impact of that? I'm just curious if that's something you'll be looking at and trying to include an analysis in the future.
This question was raised by our regulator too. So it's a really good question. And if you look at this picture here, is that this is Navy base. Okay, and they have a bunch, there are a few wells that are abandoned because of the poor water quality. And there are wells nearby here that I remember. And I did look at it, but this is something we do keep in mind that, but Oxnard aquifer wasn't really the best aquifer to look at it because people are tapping more in the lower aquifer system. And go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, Laura, we have been asked that question, and Jason didn't show me this presentation, but the water level declines several miles from the project area are modest, 5 to 15 feet kind of pumping. So those wells, there's a couple proximal wells. They're currently threatened by seawater intrusion. That risk is going to be mitigated, but the pumping cost will be a little bit greater, but not terribly so. And Jason was talking about the vertical flow and that inland extent, that extension of the Oxnard aquifer is some of that inland extent is being kind of mitigated by the downward vertical flow. Right now in our drought period, we have really strong vertical gradients from the upper system down to the lower system. Without our surface water deliveries, the PT and the PV systems are pumping hard on the lower system, as are a number of private wells. And so we have this really strong vertical gradient that we don't see in the wetter period. So the vertical flow is very much a real problem, but it's when we get back to a wetter period and the head differentials are less, that'll be somewhat mitigated as the basin improves. So.
Yeah, and in the Prop 1 grant that was raised about the impact on the local well, I did calculate once it's extracted, what is the water level effect on the local users. And I do have those numbers. Oxnard is about 5 to 10 feet. We look at it in different aquifer that we do have that study. We did consider that. Okay.
Thank you. I see Tony sitting over here, unfortunately, can't see as well since I have a computer right in front of me if people have their hands raised, but we have two hands, Supervisor Long and then EJ Remsen.
Thank you. A great presentation. I think that this modeling really helps to visualize where the movement is on the water. To piggyback on Laura's question in regards to the wells and the location, I was wondering if depth of those wells would also play a part. And then the other question I had is we do have some projects coming into play with Great Water or the one in Oxnard, and then we also have the desalter in Camarillo. Is that going to put any play into perhaps slowing down some of the seawater intrusion? I was just wondering, as we add on projects, do we see that it'll get better for the Navy base? Those were questions I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the screen interval did play a role, how the impact it is. And on the desalter, I do know that it was part of accepted as part of the GSP assumption. So desalter project is already in this simulation. As to the recycled water from City of Oxnard, I believe that when I did the GSP GSP that it wasn't an official project, and the city of Oxnard asked us not to include in an official way, but this. Okay, yes. Okay, and I look at the recycled water is definitely a very welcome source of water to the local user. And there's no doubt about it. That's the new source of water. New water is always better than try to find water.
Right, and so then also if you do the wells to understand the depth. So there are some that are deeper than others, so that would be a question. And if possible, could we get a list of what was included, the projects that were included? So when 10 years from now, we look at this, that was included already in those assumptions. I think that would be helpful, at least for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this run is basically following the no cutback scenario used in the GMA, but I'm happy to look at it, and we should make a list tracking the list of project we included. Yeah, thank you for the comment.
EJ, and then Jeff Pratt has a question, I think.
Yeah, thank you. A really informative presentation, Jason. I appreciate it. I have a question on cost. If you guys have worked out cost at all or estimated cost, obviously to operate, I'm talking about operating costs. There's a lot of energy to pump from these wells, maintenance and so forth, staff time. And also kind of separately, if the water is treated, do you have an idea of what the cost per acre foot to the user would be?
Really excellent question. I think we actually have looked at it, but I'll let Dan, he's our manager. He knows everything. I'll let him tell you.
Not sure about that. Part of that, the answer lies in what the scale of this project is. We've contemplated up to 20,000. That's probably going to be difficult to make something that big, and something half that size is probably going to control our problem, the inland extent problem, and have plenty of water for the Navy and surrounding farms. We think a 10,000 acre foot project is going to cost at least $200 million. And we expect the delivered water will cost at least $2,500 an acre foot. Now, how's that paid for? Is it by the individual recipients, or is it basin-wide charge? It's likely to be a basin-wide charge, and so that cost will be shared because we're solving one of the primary problems in the Oxnard Basin, in PV Basin. So more to come on that. I know those are important questions, but we need to know more about how big the facility is before we can have better estimates, really.
And approximately when would that project be ready?
Well, that's another good question. Our target completion date is 2027. That's probably a bit optimistic, but that's what we're driving towards. And if all goes well, we can probably do that. If we have some challenges and hangups along the way, it'll be delayed. Like many large projects don't get built in 6 years. We might be one of those, but we're trying to get this thing going. It's really an anchor project for sustainability on the plain. So, and given our drought conditions now, we're all in a hurry to do something, and we'd like to do this.
I guess my question was, when would you be able to start? Like, when would you be searching for funding and start the project?
Well, we've received some funding to date. We had a Prop 1 Round 2 grant for the feasibility study, the modeling, the conversion to the USG model that Jason described here. The GMA just helped us with monitoring well funding that's coming into play within the next year. We also have an application in for a Round 3 grant where we would be installing additional monitoring wells, additional sampling, and our demonstration production wells. So we're trying to get funding for the full-scale production wells and pump to waste so we can stress that system and look at the vertical gradients. The vertical gradients we didn't talk today about from the perched aquifer, there's some contaminants on site on the Navy base, and we need to make sure we're not perturbing that shallow groundwater flow system and entraining any of those contaminants to the bottom of the perch zone. So we heard that loud and clear from our regulators. We need to do that work, and that's also a work in progress.
Okay, thank you. Jeff Pratt, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Great presentation. It's two really quick ones. Jason, can you send me the PowerPoint? Not the PDF, but the PowerPoint the way you presented today? Is that possible?
I think so. Let me check with our managers. I'm sure it is. Dan just give me a thumbs up. You got it.
Oh. And then Laura, I want to share this with some folks. Can you send me the timestamp on this recording so I can send that out as well?
What time it is now? Like, you mean so that people can tune in right at this point?
Yeah, so they can just,
Yeah.
they can skip everything else and just go right to the presentation.
Got it. I can, I'll send you the recording with the time stamp for the presentation.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Peter Dixon, you have your hand up?
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Jason, so much for the presentation. Both yours and other presentations from United Water have been really informative. I wanted to ask if you thought that this modeling technique could be applied to the shallow groundwater systems, the perched or semi-perched aquifers, and an effort to try and understand the impacts of the extraction on the coastal salt marsh habitats at Magoo and Ormond Beach. If there's, if these methodologies would be useful and what that would take.
So the answer is yes, the model definitely could apply to the semi-perch, the shallow aquifer, and actually we are going to look at a breakout model around the Navy base to look at the seawater wedge. So yeah, the model is flexible, and we are actually going to apply to the semi-perch, and it could be applied to the situation you just described.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. No more question. So everyone's ready for assimilation to the modeling world? No, I'm kidding. Thank you.
I'm not seeing any more questions online or in the room. Okay, well, thank you so much. This was really interesting. I think that also, I mean, something that comes to my mind is if this is successful, you know, other opportunities to extend and look at other locations for extraction wells to really have a larger impact of the whole, you know, range of the seawater intrusion up there closer into Oxnard. So it'll be interesting. I know that's very far out.
One thing I guess I can share from what I've learned from this is that I think this kind of a very detailed tool helps us tease out the nuances to this, right? The aquifer doesn't look like an exact layer cake like Jason had in his earlier diagram. It has places where the aquitard gets thin. It has problems with other things. And so, you know, having this kind of a detailed tool helps us tease out those things, as well as Dan was saying, that, you know, we've got to do some things like actual production scale wells and see what really happens. So this is helping us decide these. And then the other point I would like to make is, you know, this is not going to be the be all and end all. We have a very specific problem with many years of intruded water at that location. And it's looking like there's promise to use something like an extraction barrier well field. But to solve the overall problem that we have in the coastal plains, we have to work very closely with the Fox Canyon GMA and the stakeholders to weigh a whole suite of various projects. And, you know, we can also use this kind of tool to analyze those different scenarios. So there's going to be a lot more work to do in trying to come up with an overall solution. This is definitely not the only one, but it is, an extraction barrier well field does look promising in this particular application. So more to come on this, and we can share with the committee as this moves forward. But I just found it very interesting, and I guess I have a lot of gray hair now, but I remember when the USGS came into the area and we were all impressed by the original model and some of the stuff that it could do. And it's incredible to see the detail on the progress in analyzing very specific problems. So it's encouraging. And, I talk to people in other basins, talked to somebody a while ago in the Madeira Basin, and just some of the incredible challenges that they have, and the lack of information, and the lack of tools. So this area is very fortunate to have some of these tools to work with. So it's encouraging. We got a lot of work ahead of us, but it's encouraging to me.
I just noticed that there is one more question online. There was Phil McGrath. You can probably answer from there too. Jason's returning the podium. There's a question. This model looks like it will work really well during wet years. If we have drier and drier years, how will this affect outcomes?
You said you work well for wet years, and you work well for, the model would work both pretty well for wet year or dry years. So, and the model we are using actually it has this capability of addressing the wet dry situation when the cells went dry or resaturate back. And the model we have here is very different from the model in the 1980s that has problem with it. So it worked well. That if you look at our calibration, it capture all the water level fluctuate going down and bounce back, and it captured pretty well.
You might want to talk about either you or Dan on the assumptions that were made in this model run that you have. So it was.
Oh, yes. So if you say, the one I show you is looking at the prescribed GSP scenario that we use for GMA, and we actually look at 4 weather pattern, and we could look at even more, something more extreme, or something that more people want to look at any specific situation. And the good thing about model is actually could accommodate those changes, any assumption, and incorporate into the analysis.
Is it, I think this one, it said it uses the 2070 climate factors. So
Yes.
that is taking an actual history segment and applying climate factors that actually make things, it's not an optimistic one, right? The 2070 is not optimistic.
I believe this one is when GMA did the GSP, there are four kind of simulation, and the one I pick is actually the most restrictive one, the most conservative one. And this particular scenario is used to in their GSP report as the one that give you the most critical result.
I think that the band of years that were being used includes that 1940s 20-year drought.
1939 up to 1979.
It was a pretty severe condition to begin with.
And yeah, it covered if you look at it, it's really covered the a good period of dry and wet. And that's the whole point of doing 50 years or longer, because when you look at a basin-wide study, you don't want to just focus on just particular wet or just particular wet or dry year. You have to look at over a period long enough to cover the natural fluctuation, including good wet year and dry year, and for the analysis. And I think that I think DWR did a good job in prescribing the scenario that for GSA to do the modeling.
Well, I just want to say, Thank you to United for, I don't know if there's any basins in the state that is so well managed and studied and researched. And maybe that's the case, but from my experience over the many years I've been following the work that you guys do, it's really incredible. We're really fortunate to have your knowledge, expertise, and creative thinking. So thank you.
Very smart of past United boards to invest in some of the people and the technology, because we're definitely applying them. So I represented ratepayers in years past, and sometimes we wondered about, do you really need a modeler? And the answer is we did need it. And we're using the staff and the technology that we have for the benefit of the area.
I would just add, we're also benefiting from a long history of data collection. United and the county have been committed to that for decades now. It really picked up in the 70s and has continued. And our pumping records, that's fairly rare in California still. So between the GMAs, required pumping since '85 and United since 1979. I don't think we could calibrate the model as well as we did without having an awful lot of water level information and pumping information and rainfall and stream gauge. And just the data sets here are really rich, and we're fortunate to have those.
Yeah, I totally agree that the model can only as good as the data. And I'm surprised that we have really good data. When I applied for the job with the United, yeah, I did have reservation why the district want to hire a modeler. Now I look at it, I'm very glad I joined, and I'm really happy that I'm involved with this model and this tool being put into good use. And I really appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you. We're
Excellent,
running
yeah.
a little behind, but there is one other question I think is pretty important that EJ put in the chat about, did you plan on climate change factors? And so we have sea level rise and drought and all of that.
The seawater rise that I think we're gonna mainly is work with the DWR and water board to see how we want to address it. And the model can handle all those changes by adjusting the seawater rise incorporated into the model.
But it doesn't at the moment what you.
At this moment, it's not. Yeah, but the seawater rise, it's not. It's only I remember 50 years, it's only a few feet. So it's not gonna have a dramatic change on the overall study. And the climate factor, I think, is more important, that how the climate change, impacting the wet year, dry year, that I think that would be very critical to the whole basin and the study.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
We're gonna move on to the watershed's greatest needs. Tony, you wanna say some few words while I pull up a slide for me?
Well, I think that's a good transition. I appreciate the good questions for Jason. When we started off, we thought maybe it would be a quiet crowd and we would all have to be hecklers, and so that was a very good discussion. And this transitions to, I think what I was saying a few minutes ago is that it's going to take the whole community to really solve some of these things. It's a whole watershed. What happens in the Santa Clarita area, as Lynn Plumbeck mentioned earlier, does affect things downstream. I often have been talking with people in the Fillmore-Piru Basin, and sometimes they want to think, well, what happens here stays here. It's like Las Vegas. No, it's not. They're affected by things that happen upstream, and their activities affect downstream. So we wanted to revisit what are some of the greatest needs in the basin, and then really get back to talking about what are some of these projects and programs that we can institute to address some of these recognized problems and needs. So.
Thank you. And I'm sharing here a slide that shows, this was a summary of the greatest needs that was from discussion. And I think we also did it was some written requests for input back in 2018 and then kind of summarized in 2019, if you remember, in preparation for the IRWM plan update. And then that was also leading up to round one of Prop 1 IRWM funding. So this was the summary that was shared back then. And when it takes some time, I think I can't remember if I shared this out before the meeting, but take some time to look at this. And it's in no particular order, so keep that in mind. But how does this reflect our current, needs in the watershed? Are there, and if you think that something should be a high priority, maybe that's on this list, we don't need to rank them, but it might be also worthwhile to at least voice that, one or two of these is an extreme priority right now, where you think is a really one of the primary needs, or if there's something we're missing. I know it's hard for most of us probably to say that something on this list is not a need anymore. So maybe starting with some of them that you think are a high priority, and if any of them also should be modified and changed a little, like number 2 about GSP development. Of course, we're still tracking that, and that's happening, but they have been developed. So we've taken some steps forward there.
I'll just add a comment to that. And this is something DWR had asked for us when we were preparing our application for round 1, as Laura mentioned, the guidelines and the PSP for this funding, that became sort of an important factor. They wanted us to justify why the projects were needed and how they were going to address what we defined as our greatest needs. And of course, they also want us to do a better job of connecting the projects we select to climate resilience. And that's been a big focus of the Prop 1 and the plan update that we did back in 2019. So, and you can see that this list is sort of all over the place in terms of, it's just general thoughts and ideas. It's not categorized by type of need. And if you've ever read through the IRWM plan, some of you may have seen that we had identified in the first plan, watershed by watershed, what some of the key challenges and issues were. I know Tony remembers this exercise when we used to sit in the multi-purpose room at the county government center and brainstorm ideas way back when. So it's just that we have to be better and better as we put our projects together. And this is teeing up, looking at projects for the next round of funding or any other sources of funding. And this collaboration that we do in this group is so important because there are other sources of funding and you are all working on other things that are getting funded other ways. Like you're getting Prop 1 money for groundwater planning and project development. So, and modeling. So it's really important for us to, I think, succinctly and concisely express for this, today it's for this watershed, what are the key drivers behind and perhaps common needs that go across all the projects. And again, this all ties back to our plan goals. And I'll just remind you really quickly that we have 6 goals in our plan, and they're similar to the IRWM plans everywhere in California, which is improving and enhancing water quality, improving and enhancing restoration and habitat, flood management, flood protection, climate change adaptation and resilience, recreation and access opportunities, and water supply, diversifying our portfolio and then increasing our reliable water supply. So those are pretty much, those are the overarching themes, and these sort of fit into that. So I guess for today, we really want to see what is missing maybe in that list. Do we need to characterize something a little differently? Because those concise statements then go into our application. We are doing these projects or this project because it's meeting this need. And the state just wants to see us connect those dots a little better as we move into I mean, that was the purpose behind the Prop 1 guidelines comment on needs.
There's some comments already, both from Kat, Selm, and I see Bruce Orr. I don't know if you want to unmute and say anything. No. But both, I think that is a good point about looking, funding, filling gaps, data gaps for the GSP, Fillmore and Pyro. Is there other specific data gaps that you're interested in, or somebody from the GSP would like to say any, or there's worked in the GSA, say anything about? And then also Bruce's comment about wildfire risk management and resiliency needs to be added. I agree with that. I think that generally that's an important thing. We've got, I think we had something about climate change in here, climate resiliency, but the wildfire risk management in particular has been obviously had a large impact on our watershed and will continue to with large scale fires and then followed by debris flows and flooding. And so they go hand in hand.
Well, if you look at the comments, they're exactly right. The resiliency is a very popular word, and we should use it too. It's a good word. So I don't see that on our list, resilient for the natural systems and the water supply portfolio. Stormwater capture, managed aquifer recharge is a common term now. You know, United's been doing that for years, but you know, ironically, we have a lot of regulatory troubles doing what we do well. And, but it's a very, you know, DWR, it's very popular with DWR, stormwater capture and putting water in the ground. And we want to keep doing that for sure.
You know, we've never talked about this, but some of our greatest needs do have to do with wanting to see better alignment of regulations and entities that, you know, are involved. So that's sort of like the human social side, or if you will, or, you know, the regulatory side. It's not the actual need of water quality and enhancement, but these things can't happen until that problem is addressed, the roadblocks and the constraints to getting things done. So I don't know if we want to step into that territory at all, but this is what's happening on the statewide level with IRWM regions talking about what has worked and what hasn't worked in implementing projects and programs and their plans. And a lot of it comes back to those roadblocks. And so maybe that's a message that we want to enforce in when we define our needs or outline our needs, is to say the collaboration around the most effective way to address these problems and to create these solutions really has to be something that the state engages in. So
I definitely agree with that, Lynn, that you know, if you look at the previous governor's water action plan, or you look at the current governor's water resiliency plan, it talks about balancing the various needs, but in practicality, it's difficult for that to happen. And so I agree that that leadership is needed from the very top, because, you know, if I talk to somebody whose job it is to enforce the state's environmental regulations, and somebody whose job it is to make sure that a GSP is done, many times it's difficult for them to step out of the particular box that they're in. And so I think it takes leadership at the very top to say, you know, how are we going to work together to balance this? And I think one of the things we're finding, I was just looking at number 2, and it seems like a long time ago that we put this together about finishing GSPs. And we've actually gotten a lot of work done in the past 3 years since we put this together last, but there's much more to do. And in this area, I don't know how we express this, but we hardly ever have a steady state. There's always something changing. So that 40 or 50 year historical record, even before you apply climate factors, it's pretty dramatically changing. You have incredibly wet decades like the 1990s and incredibly dry ones like we're in now. So that, maybe that's what equals water supply resiliency here. But, bad things happen when there's no water locally. And, what are the things that we can do to address that? Do we put a plan together to make sure that basins are completely full in wet periods? Is there offsite storage? Are there other things? Are we allowing ourselves to work the water elevation in the basins on those other years? And I think we have a lot of working together. And I don't know exactly how we characterize that, but it seems like that's very important for us.
I hear from that both a working together importance of that regionally and on a large scale. And as you said, keeping basins full is really where are the opportunities that we haven't yet explored more of that, floodmar opportunities, managed aquifer recharge, like what's the full extent of what we could do here to capture as much water as possible and also mitigating, flood risks. I don't know if anyone has seen Daniel Swain's more recent presentations, and I plan to send a link out to the group because it was just yesterday, but the Southern California Water Dialogue hosted Daniel Swain. I forget his exact title, but I assume a lot of people have heard of him, of course, but about the future climate for Southern California. And I think that it's a digestible, 1 hour presentation that puts a lot into perspective. And the thing that stood out for me was the flooding risk. And that we're in the middle of a drought. So it's like, how do you convince people to spend tens of millions, billions of dollars on flood risk reduction and flood management types of projects, that while also convincing them to conserve water? And that's like a public messaging challenge that we've always been facing. But looking at the intensity and the severity of future storms, and that, it's really quite shocking. And I think something that I think we should keep in mind and constantly in our conversations about, it's not just now and what's the current situation, but it's really thinking ahead in that those future climate scenarios.
Maybe changing the wording on the flood control one, for example, to flood risk reduction, multi-benefit projects and aquifer management, to manage flood risk. And essentially, I think what you were saying, Tony, is like smoothing out the variations, which is kind of what resiliency and reliability are. It's like, how do you have your portfolio of actions as well as projects that will make you adapt in each case so that you're not having an extreme. And that's hard to plan for. I mean, those arc storm planning exercises where you're talking about, didn't they have a storm in Marin County that dropped 16 inches of rain in just a few days back in, I think it was October. That's like kind of an unheard of intensity over a short period of time. And that might just be the beginning. So yeah, I think it's important to do that.
Yeah, I think was referenced yesterday is that, 2016, 2017 was the wettest year on record for Northern California. And then we've had followed by some of the driest years. So really having to manage for both ends at the same time.
I think, we probably could amend 2 a little bit, because I think we have all of our GSPs developed in the watershed. But it's more implementing and continuing the coordination. I think there have been quite a few steps forward on 3 also, in trying to integrate the modeling and assumptions between the Santa Clarita Valley basin area and the downstream basins. So maybe those. Yeah, probably two could just be simplified a bit.
On the habitat side, we don't really talk about the weed management efforts. That would be one that there's a big intense effort to try to work on a rundow management. And we have a lot of people on the call today that are part of that. Which is also not only does it improve, it does a lot of things. I mean, it's fire risk reduction and water demand reduction and habitat improvement. And then another one that I might suggest adding is something explicitly about emergency interties. And we had a project in round one that's an intertie between Callegas and Las Virgenes. And I think we're going to need more and more of those. And there's a project considering Casitas doing an exchange, I think, with Santa Barbara County with Carpinteria, which was done in the last big drought temporarily. So more and more of that collaboration is needed in the moment to not have to have redundant infrastructure where you can share some of the infrastructure.
Lynn, I think that ties very well to the whole idea of doing your best to be prepared for a future downswing in precipitation. Because if, for example, we had an intertie and maybe we had more of a relationship with the Met service area, which serves a good part of Ventura County, maybe we could keep Lake Casitas fuller. Maybe we could, do some exchanges. And I know Met is more interested in participating in some of those things now. It used to be that, the parcel that's on the edge of the Met service area or Callegas service area, you can't even utilize a hydrant for a building permit. It was that strict in years past. I actually experienced that. There was somebody was doing a building permit in Nyland Acres, and there was a City of Oxnard fire hydrant on the other side of the street. And the Nyland Acres property could not count on the use of the fire hydrant that was supplied water by Oxnard and Callegas and Met for that building permit. So if there's a little more flexibility between all of us and our kind of hard service areas, there are many more opportunities for those interconnections and, maximizing storage. Somebody invested a bunch of money in building Lake Casitas, and, we all collectively could benefit in seeing that kind of thing full, or seeing, if we plug that hole by the engineering solution at the Magoo Canyon, what can we do to add more water to the Oxnard Plain, or better manage that? But I think all the easy and independent actions have been done, and it's the ones that are complex and require coordination that are still before us. So, and probably compromise is needed on every front.
I like your use of the word flexibility. I think that's going to obviously be really key. Flexible resilience.
I think we can work on the language on the 7 flood control. Maybe we could say mitigate flood risks. There's there's a lot of investment and interest in this watershed by TNC and other groups for our broad natural floodplain. I don't think we want to suggest we want to channelize that. We want to, be protective where we can, but also recognize the habitats and the natural flow system we still have and enjoy here.
I agree. I think we can maybe even blend stormwater capture into that. I think that's something I've kind of heard. It's a possibility of, flood risk reduction, flood management with aquifer recharge, mitigating flood risk, all of that together. Of course, stormwater capture is both beneficial for flood reduction, water availability, water quality. So it's multiple things, but I think we might be able to combine that.
Is there a way that we could draw in, say, some of the problems, the challenges that local agriculture faces on complying with the maybe not even ag waiver program anymore, but is there a way that some of that could be brought into this? I don't know if this area has horrible water quality problems as compared to some others, but we certainly have regulatory challenges. And are there ways that could be brought in together? You can't sleep in the back.
Guess that question was directed to me. Yeah, I think that kind of goes in line with something that Lynn had mentioned earlier, which is regulatory streamlining and addressing hurdles to kind of common solutions or a single solution to related problems. If you look countywide, the majority of our water quality issues related to ag discharge are, more in the Cayugas watershed than the Santa Clara River, but there definitely are some water quality issues to be addressed. And a lot of those issues tie hand in hand with water efficiency, water demand, and it all really relates to each other. And this coming year especially is a good time to brainstorm solutions, to brainstorm, what the best pathway to maximizing where we can find solutions to some of these related problems and incorporating those into regulatory requirements as we develop a long-term WDR for the irrigated lands regulatory program.
Thanks, Jody.
So is there something that we should put more specific in our list here, or is there a way we could modify one of our items to include some of that?
Like some of that is just how we address the need. So maybe we want to look at taking this brainstorming that we're doing, revise some of the actual statement of need, and then include companion strategies that will help get us there. And some of it is, like you said, it's water use efficiency and actual actions that can be taken. And some of it is more related to how we kind of work together. So I think we should articulate that though in this document. And what's missing in here is a specific drought topic. And so multiple dry years like we're experiencing now, which turn up the pressure on everybody because, there are all these associated problems that occur. And we don't have currently a region-wide drought response strategy. And I've been thinking for a long time since this drought started, and we really haven't seen it. It dipped a little and we've been in it pretty much for a long time now, is how would we do a regional approach that identifies those really critical steps that have to be taken either in advance or during these events that maybe is in a slightly different category, just like flood is in a different category. So maybe we just add a drought response, a need for coordinated drought response.
Yeah, I'm just wanted to address some of the comments in the chat too. I don't want to reread them for those that have already probably read them, but I think that Bruce made a good point. I mean, as Lynn had said about, invasive weeds management and removal, we spend a lot of energy in conversations and talk about that, especially a subset of the stakeholders. And I think that's a high priority in the watershed. So I think that, calling out something about invasive weed removal and management in the watershed, I think fits with what we're all addressing is, with our efforts as the greatest needs. And also, I think it's a good point Bruce made that we talk a lot about potential water savings from removing Arundo, but we don't have very robust specific data on how Arundo water consumption varies and what the effects are and benefits. And so that's something that I think he's, as Bruce pointed out, it also relates to comment about maybe GSP data gaps. So might be something that we're looking at for future funding and potentially for an IRWM round 2, and just something we need to document and think about how to fill that data gap. And as EJ just put in a comment, it also contributes to wildfire hazards. You guys are also welcome to, unmute and join the conversation. So we're not just talking in a room here just amongst ourselves.
I've said before, and I'll repeat that, from an employee who works for a water agency, it would be extremely helpful to have a well-controlled study that demonstrates in this local climate what kind of water savings are achievable by Arundo removal. We have, I don't know if Tom Dudley's on the call, but Tom has said, that's right, we could use something better. And I believe he said at one point that there was a colleague at UCSB that started a study and then I think got a better job offer someplace else, and the study didn't get finished, unfortunately. But I think that would be very helpful to have something that is extremely well documented, controlled, and peer reviewed that we could cite for our region. And I think the fire risk is very obvious from some of those invasives, especially Arundo. And obviously the habitat benefits are very, very important, but that would be a specific one I think that would be helpful in selling that as something that could perhaps get the kind of funding from water entities like we see from turf removal or something else, where it's now an established program and you can get ongoing funding.
Well, it's too bad you weren't on the chain of emails that have been going back and forth on the with the WAM group, because that's been a hot topic of conversation. And so you hit right on it. Yeah. Tom?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that is exactly what we've been talking about recently. It looks like both Bruce and I were writing basically the same comment at the same time. But one thing that's really beneficial is now that it's very clear the extent to which we can use modeling with good data to actually make some reasonable conclusions about how groundwater works. To tie the vegetation into that more carefully is really a critical need. And as we've all been talking about, the data just are not there. And I think that was Tony that mentioned that we had a person doing some really interesting work related to that. Alex Pivovarov, she was a postdoc at UCLA, but working with us on Arundo water use in the Santa Clara. And she is working at the Hanford facility now up in Washington, but is interested in picking this work up again if the funds become available. So that's where we've been talking about potentially putting in an IRWM project that focuses specifically on getting objective data on water use, because say Arundo, if it's on a drier surface or a wetter surface or under different wind conditions, it can be an order of magnitude or more difference in water use. So getting real data over a period of a whole season would be critical to actually doing reasonable modeling. Bruce may want to add to that.
Well, I think the comments in your conversation and Tony's comments cover it pretty well, but I was just thinking, I think after this meeting, there seems to be a strong interest and need to combine our thoughts a bit better and think about how to link this to the modeling work that's being done in the various for the various GSPs. And so I think having a subgroup discussion about that tearing off of, say, the invasive weed task force and other Arundo discussions would be great.
Bruce, did you want to just quickly mention the so-called WAM thing? I think people have heard us talk about it before, but it might be good just to remind that is at an early stage of developing.
Sure. So we've talked briefly before about subgroup of the invasive weed task force really has been trying to move things forward and what we're calling the watershed-wide Arundo management program, or WAM, and develop, basically drawing all the work that's been done and talked about over the years to develop sort of a strategic framework for how we would go about seeking larger funding. And I think as today's discussion indicates, thinking about the multiple benefits of Arundo removal, from water to wildfire, drought resiliency, habitat benefits, all of that is what we're trying to, consolidate state of the knowledge and what we know about Arundo in the watershed, and provide information that could be then used for grant applications and ideally lobbying for larger amounts of funding, especially given we have this window of state surplus funds that might be suitable. So that's the short update. We've got a website trying to summarize some of these benefits that we'll share with everyone soon. And then we're working on a short strategic plan sort of framework to get the ideas out there too. And that's not quite, but just about ready for distribution as well. And so I think, within the next few weeks, we want to be reaching out to a broader variety of stakeholders and coordinating with this committee and the invasive weed task force members to make sure we're capturing everyone's input and that we have a common consensus on how to move forward.
Thanks, Bruce. I think we're kind of, that kind of tees up for one of the later things on the agenda, but about future meeting topics and also potential for a upper and lower watershed committee meeting. I think that this might be a good topic. I've talked to Rick Vergoots. I don't know if he's still on the call or not, but suggested maybe we do have an upper or lower watershed committee meeting. And I think, obviously, I think there's a lot of things we can talk about and kind of coordination on some of the GSP, coordination that's happened and just sharing that information, data gaps, especially as it relates to the Arundo water usage, and having that conversation, have that meeting be one of the goals is to start discussing potentially a joint project for IRWM round 2 or a singular, one lower or upper watershed. I'm not sure if it really matters, but that just, it seems like we have stakeholders on the entire watershed wide. So I think that it would be appropriate conversation to have for a joint meeting in the coming months.
That sounds great. I think thinking about the study of Arundo water use and potential benefits, having an integrated full watershed approach would be great, because there are going to be significant differences with location within the watershed. So ideally we'd have sites in both upper and lower watershed that would be part of that study if we can get funding.
That's good input. Thank you, Bruce. So I don't want to cut this conversation short. I think we should, keep if there's more comments, but I just wanted to note that we basically blended or gone over time. And I think that discussion on projects, I just like to also open the door now. We've talked about greatest needs, but are there, kind of also talk some about specific projects or studies that needed, and this opportunity to kind of start talking about projects as well. If you, have projects in mind that meet some of these needs. And I think we'll save, updates on the Prop 1 round 1 projects for a later meeting, but we'll take some time, another maybe 5 minutes to talk about if there's more projects. And then I know that Lynn had some IRWM program updates that I want to make sure we have time for as well, about 5 minutes for that or so, I think. So
can you talk about wrap up the needs conversation? Like what happens next with that?
Yeah. So I'm going to take a stab at, taking notes on some of the comments that I've heard, and I'm going to edit this list and then present that at the next meeting again for more input.
Email before the next meeting.
Yeah, I can email it out also before the next meeting so that you guys can have input and either send me back emails or give comment at the next meeting, but we'll share that. So I'll save it, send this, maybe post this after this meeting, and then we'll spend between now and the next meeting kind of finessing it. I mean, there's a plan you want to talk about. Does it go in like the plan? Not doing a full update to the plan this year.
Yeah.
But you'll be including this as well, right?
Yeah, I think we can, we just update sections of the plan as appropriate that help tell our story a little bit better, you know, since it has been 3 years since we did the last list. So, and I think introducing some of the other parameters we've talked about, like alignment and regional collaboration and all of that, is really important as kind of how we're going to make these things work. And that also tells the state the story that we really do work closely together, not only within Ventura County, but also with our neighbors in neighboring regions. And I think that's important.
So any other comments or projects people want to mention that they really want to see done in the next, 5 years or so? Concepts as well. We can continue these conversations. We've got now, between now and at least September, I think, to really, I think my mic cut out, but between now and at least September to have these conversations.
So Laura, what do you want folks to do that have ideas for those? We we have a list of projects in our IRWMP that we added 3 years ago. I know for my agency, some of those haven't penciled out, so maybe they would be removed because studies showed that they weren't. Well, some of them might not be worthy of doing. Some might be less priority or more expensive. So I think the things that we've all decided not to do should probably be removed. And then do you want ones in, for example, that, if there are projects that folks are working with the Foxcan and GMA on, they may not be seeking funding, but it seems like it would be beneficial for them to be included in the list. And then in particular, it seems like there are projects and cooperation that we've thought about in the past 3 years that maybe span some of the watersheds, and maybe they could be noted in a special way or a separate way to say, hey, there's interconnections going back and forth that could benefit 3 watersheds, or there's a, county line proposal between Santa Clarita Valley Water and United to do this. It seems like those would be really worthwhile to list, even though they're not specifically only Santa Clara River.
Absolutely. So yes, projects that if you, I put in it's on our website, and when I sent out the email notification of this meeting, it's really, we're talking about the list that's in Appendix N that was part of the IRWM 2019 plan update. And I can put a link to that again in the chat. I actually have it here. I could share it, but for you guys just to see how long that list is again of projects. But on that list, they were broken down by watershed, but there's also a section of regional projects. So absolutely, we can put regional ideas and projects in there. And I think a number of them might fall off the list, as well as you said, be potentially updated or kind of tweaked. And then I do think we should include, as you recommended, Tony, the GSP projects, even if, this is not just for IRWM round 2 funding, but just what are the projects in the watershed that, we'll be seeking funding and opportunities for coordination and advancement on in the next, kind of thinking out at least 5 years, if not longer.
I wanted to just mention too that this list that's in the plan that's been sitting there for 3 years, a static document. there's a lot of activity going on across the county in so many different areas. And for example, last October, there was this sustainability summit that United hosted here, where a number of United's projects were previewed or re-explained if they'd been previewed before. And some of those are not on the in the plan. And the same is true of the project that Jason was talking about. I don't think that's in the plan. So unfortunately, these document cycles, tend to just get stale a minute after you finish them. So the good news is that we have this new platform that we're going to be sharing. It's out there already. It's our data platform, our GIS-based program where all the projects are going to be, we're asking everybody to submit projects through that vehicle. And it allows for people to see the boundaries or the information and it's got the dialogue or the box that pops up and gives you more information about the project. So it's going to be a great tool for us, and it will be current as of the time somebody enters the information. So we're going to really hope that that becomes the new way that we share information with each other and it stays current and up to date. We're going to do a training on the use of that. It's a form that's not too different from the fillable PDF that we used the last time we did a call for projects, but it might, and unfortunately the current platform does not include all the projects that are currently in the plan. And so I've been asking a couple of agencies like United has been working on this and Cayugas to just update their projects into the thing, because I don't have the capacity to enter all the things that are in the plan now, but that will be the tool and the mechanism. And that it also, you can download the layers. The whole point of this was to be able to show, the watershed boundary layers and the groundwater basin boundaries and the critical habitat area boundary. There's a lot of layers on that map. So it's a planning tool for you if you're designing a project as well. So that's the new tool that we have available. And that I think is going to be, I hope that becomes an interactive thing for all of you as you go in there and you put your own projects in and you look at the other projects and you figure out where the synergies might be. So we're crossing into new territory where we're trying to get away from that static meeting to meeting or plan to plan and keep it, real time.
Okay. Yeah. So if there's not any more comments or anybody want to share some project ideas at this time, I think we could move on to item 7, the IRWM program updates. I think we kind of covered item 6, topics for future meetings in a joint meeting already. And I'll also just say at the next meeting, I hopefully will have a draft of our new website to share with you all. So I expect to have that by the next meeting as well. That's all I have for kind of coordinator updates this time.
One thing in addition to that, I would love to, if we could get maybe one project proponent, the projects that we either funded the last time or the ones that were kind of on the almost list, and receive some updates on some of those, because like we had talk of some innovative technology out at the Piru wastewater treatment plant, and I have no idea what's happening. So it would be helpful, I think, if I know Robert Richardson came and gave an update on the iron and manganese plant. I missed that meeting, so I didn't receive that update, but I think I could look at that. But I think that would be very helpful, as if we, even if they're simple, I know some of the project proponents are spread pretty thin. But I think it's very interesting for them to come in. It's good for us to know what's going on. And maybe if we just, had one of them. I know I've been trying to advocate for that with some of the things that United has going on, but I'd really like to hear about some of the other ones too.
Yeah. Okay, I made a note of that, and we'll make that a priority for a future meeting. And I know Ventura Water unfortunately wasn't able to attend today. Regretfully, they have a lot going on, and more limited staff at the moment available. So yeah, we can include updates on funded projects, ones that were almost funded, and some of the regional, I think, at another meeting.
And just thank you, Tony, for that idea. We have talked about doing that before, and it would be good to get some of the regional updates, because the conversations today have focused not just on this watershed necessarily. So like the intertie between Las Virgenes and Callegas, and an update on that alignment study for the project with the state water entitlement holders here and Callegas.
We have all these really, we have all these perfectionists that want to give wonderful presentations, but just even a short verbal update on, hey, where is the interconnection project? You know, are we working on gaining the right of way and all of that type of stuff? Or they don't have to be a, 20 slide presentation every time. I think just keeping people aware of what those are is really helpful.
Well, and we did have Jody presented, and we had a presentation from Christine McCaffrey at the last 2 years ago at a general membership meeting. So yeah, we just need to keep that going. So it looks like we have, are we supposed to be done at 11? I'm sorry. Okay. I thought we had till 11:30. My humble apologies. Okay. I'm going to go really quick through the Prop 1 round 2 process, which we're going to be sharing more information later, via email. But basically it's looking like, the final PSP comes out in, we hope, May. I think that's when they're targeting. And that's our signal to get started in earnest. This watershed's a little ahead of the other watersheds having this conversation today, but and just to cut to the chase, it's looking like we're having a deadline of February of next year for our application. So that's good news. It gives us the time we need to finish our DACI project lists, and also, come together and figure out what we want to do in each watershed. So, stay tuned for the specifics on that. I will say really quickly too, that the 3 regions within our funding area have been having some conversations to set the stage for whether or not we can become non-competitive, which DWR has a significant incentive for us to do that. And the steering committee did take some action the last time they met about what we would like to see happen. I have an update for the steering committee, which I'll be sharing with you all later separately, but there's some real movement in the direction of having an agreement. So that's really good news. That means our application would not be scored, and there would be some significant advantages to us in a simpler process. So as long as we don't exceed the total amount available in round 2, which is $34.3 million for non-DAC projects, and we have 3.3 something, I'm sorry, 6.37, I think, in DAC projects set aside. So things are going to really get heated up pretty soon on the round 2 front. And DWR has been sending out more messages to us than they had in the past. So we're having good collaboration with the state around all this, which is really good. Just really quick DACIP update, the task force that Laura and I sit on. We've been very busy trying to allocate some set aside funding for drought relief to communities in our region. And we did have 2 projects that emerged on the Oxnard Plain, one for the Garden Acres Mutual Water Company and one for Nyland Acres Mutual. These have to be drought response type projects that have an immediate benefit. We're working in collaboration with the other 2 regions in the watershed to spend or to allocate $5 million, which is a small amount, but actually can do a lot of good. We've had a tremendous amount of positive consensus and collaboration around this whole process. So we're excited to see that. Yes. And next Wednesday, we have our next WCVC DAC committee meeting. We had one earlier this month, but we're having 2 this month because we're going to look at all the programmatic and project ideas that came out, project development ideas that came out of an RFP for task 4. And task 4 is the final task in that $9.8 million grant across our funding area to provide outreach and communication, do needs assessments, and then to provide technical assistance and training and project development. It's exciting. We're really making some good progress on that. And we'll be demonstrating that this app, it's called the TAPT app, that was developed by Cal State University for analyzing and comparing projects to each other. So we're going to be looking at, we think maybe 9 projects, or at least reviewing, I forget how many it is actually, but some of you are on the committee already. And so you know that we're having this meeting, but it's next Wednesday, the 30th at 3:30 p.m. over Zoom. This will not be in person. And I really recommend you consider tuning in to see the demonstration of that app, because we may be using a similar app to compare as a tool for project evaluation for round 2. And so I'll be reminding all the steering committee members about that, because I think that's an opportunity for you to, if you're not already on the committee. I know EJ's been coming to our meetings, and Tony, I think you've been to some as well. So mark your calendar for that if you're interested, and let us know if you need the link. So lots of activity in the DACI program, and really good engagement in our DAC meetings. I really appreciate participation of our supervisors and assistants and supervisors themselves. And a lot of you that are on this call today have been part of that. So thank you. A lot of collaboration across our funding area, which has been really exciting.
I think that covers our agenda, and I'll let Tony talk us out, but I will be sending out highlights from this meeting and the recording, and some additional like links to things that we might have talked about, as well as an update on the greatest needs based on our conversation, and be asking for everyone's feedback on that. Also be asking probably in the email if you guys want to share any feedback on this hybrid meeting, this being our first. I'm sure there's room for improvement, and we will continue to work on that, but any feedback is welcome too. Thank you.
All right, well, I'm talked out. So, and we've passed 11. So thank you everybody for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.